David Collins.
30 minutes. Show with
David
Collins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. I'm your host, David Collins, and we have another great episode for you today. I'm really looking forward to it. We're back on track having a guest on the show. Of course, last week we did a solo episode, which we like to do. I think that was our fourth solo episode. It's episode 50 today, and it's also going to be our season 2 finale. We're going to take about 30 days off here, and then we're going to start in October with a great idea with season 3. We have some great guests planned, some great new format ideas, and we're really looking forward to that. To celebrate, though, 50 episodes. I mean, can you imagine when we started about a year and a half ago there, I had no idea how quickly we'd reach 50 episodes or exactly what that would look like. And it's the end of season 2. I thought I'd celebrate here with a new tattoo. So I'm going to show that off here. It's a little difficult to show off, but I'm going to try. Are you able to see that, Paul?
Yes, I can. It's phenomenal.
So I got a big 50 on my back. I thought that would be good to celebrate the show there. We got a great guest today, really looking forward to it, some great games, and then later in the show, we're going to be taking a little look at some of the moments that I've had on other people's shows throughout the tenure of Season 2, and listen to a quick compilation that Jerry put together there. I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Haven't gotten the chance yet. And we're also going to be listening to some voicemails at the end of the show from some of our great Season 2 guests. Unfortunately, not all the ones that I'd hoped would send in a voicemail did, but it should still be a great segment there. A lot of great things to get into, though, but of course, before we start all that, today's everybody's favorite color of the day. Today's color of the day, Admiral. The Democratic National Convention passed this week, and Admiral is the color blue, similar to the color they use to represent the Democratic Party. Admiral is also, ironically enough, on the exact opposite of the color wheel than Army Green. Isn't that interesting? Go figure. Made of 29 red, 28 green, and 87 blue. Today's color of the day, Admiral. One last thing before we start the show. Today's sponsor of the show, Max Motors in Manhattan, Kansas. And thanks so much for being such a long-time sponsor with us.
Brought to you by Max Motors. Don't overpay on your next vehicle. Max Motors on Highway 24 in Manhattan.
Today's guest is Paul Rader, and we're going to get right into world news with David Collins. And we have only a few stories there. We're only back-to-back a week before our last episode, but of course there are some important things that we wanted to cover. Paul, when you think about world news, what are you thinking about this week?
Well, obviously you have the Democratic National Convention that just happened, and as is unfortunately the case, there's always something war-related going on around the world.
Well, I heard Ukraine is now inside of Russia. Isn't that interesting? Well, when you try to get worldly there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, war games are not my forte, so I try not to comment on them too much.
Well, I'll tell you what's on the top of my list here. Phil Donahue, dead at 88. Did you hear about this? You see this?
That also, yeah. He's a little, well, I'm not sure if he was technically a little bit before my time. Might have been when I was a baby or a toddler. But yeah, basically Oprah before Oprah.
Is that Oprah. Right? And that's kind of the description that I've heard. You know, I have no idea. I didn't no idea really who this Phil Donahue was. I asked Jerry. I said, Phil Donahue? A lot of people were saying, though, he's a bit of a war hero, or an anti-war spokesperson, and some people were calling him Phil Donahero.
Hey, I don't quite know about too much about his history, but I do know who he is.
Phil Donahue, what is he? Color of the day? Hugh. Jerry likes to include some jokes here as we go through the news. What do you think about Phil Donahue? Were you a fan?
I mean, I can't really say. I never watched him. Like I said, he was sort of before my time, or at least when I was really young. So I never really watched him. But daytime talk shows aren't really my thing, anyways.
Right. Well, I'm a big fan of a sitcom, so I'm with you there. Have you been following this Boeing spacecraft story? Now, what I found interesting about this story, not a lot of people are aware of it. I'm not sure if they've been suppressing this in the media or how that works exactly. But there's a Boeing spacecraft they sent up into space, and it was only supposed to be about a 4-day thing. And now these 2 astronauts have been stuck up there for about 6 weeks. Are you seeing this?
I did, actually, and I saw that William Shatner was talking about it the other day. I haven't been following it too closely.
Oh, is he going to go get them out of that situation?
I don't know about that. I don't know if Captain Kirk is up to that task.
Well, that'd be a nice way to end the story.
Maybe.
These Boeing stories seem to be coming up every week, though. Yeah, I keep picturing one of those astronauts is up there in space and keeps pulling a whistle out of their pocket and saying, I really shouldn't have brought this. Robert F. Kennedy, though. You hear about this? You see this? Dropped out of the race. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was running for just out of a third party for the president of the United States. He recently dropped out and endorsed Trump. Did you see that coming?
I mean, I thought he might just try to stick it out for the rest of the campaign, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily surprised. And both of the parties have been worried that he would siphon votes from them if he stayed in the race. Now, if he stayed in the race, he wasn't going to win.
Right.
He probably would not have won a state, but I figured he might try to stick it out. But
well, at least the cookie finally has crumbled there. I heard one of the biggest I read a little about this story, of course, but I saw one of the biggest criticisms being received after this endorsement. People were saying, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't understand you. I think that's one of the biggest issues with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. People just can't hear what he's saying. He probably makes some good points if he could get it out. Of course, the biggest story this week was that DNC that you had mentioned there. A lot of speakers coming out there. Did you see any of the speakers?
I did hear a little bit about people that did come out. Obviously, you had John Legend.
I didn't see him
performing there. Yeah, and the artist formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, the Chicks. I remember back in the day they had there was a controversy with them. They had criticized George W. Bush when he was president. So I that's kind of where I always remember them from.
Well, that's a fascinating story.
There as well, too, yeah.
Oh, they're lifelong, I suppose. Well, that certainly makes sense. Other speakers, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, the Obamas. What a lineup there. You know, I saw even basketball coach Steve Kerr spoke last week. Stephen Kerr. What do you think the Republicans call that guy?
I mean, I don't know, but hey, you know what? Regardless, I mean, I don't get into my own politics, but
certainly.
Thankful for him and Team USA getting us another gold medal in basketball.
Well, Kamala Harris spoke Thursday there, but I wanted to cover that. Maybe we'll just cut world news short a little bit because I think we might talk a little about this later in the show. Some of these things. I do have some questions for you as a bit of a political analyst, of course, and that was world news with David Collins. Today's guest is a writer, author, researcher, public speaker, and now broadcaster. A nonpartisan political analyst who writes for multiple organizations and also publishes his own political science blog on medium.com. Today's guest isn't only online, though. He's also published a book, Why Independents Rarely Win Elections and How They Could Become More Competitive. Most recently, he's began broadcasting everywhere you find shows, the Political with Paul podcast. Email Paul directly at paulraderwrites@gmail.com. Make some noise for today's great guest today, Paul Rader.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Well, it's so good to have you. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. And we do want to learn more about you and some of those, and maybe that book, too, that's very fascinating to me. I've never written a book personally, but we had to get into this first segment right away today.
David Collins.
Captivating developments.
DC's CDs. And I had a couple developments that I wanted to touch base. Of course, we're going to be off air on this show for about 30 days, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be on the Instagram or maybe putting some things together for October. And we have some great projects coming up in September, excuse me. But first I wanted to say I wrote for a roast last week, and I'm not going to say for who or exactly what it was, but there was a joke that I wrote that didn't get used. And I wanted to say my favorite joke here. So we're gonna just say it here. It was my favorite joke, and it did not get used. This is a joke for Vinnie Paulino, who was also a part of that roast. Vinnie Paulino gets a lot of flack from his weight, not just from the jokes we make, but also from all the asteroids he pulls in orbit. And that didn't get used. I can't imagine why that didn't get used. So many of the other jokes did get used. That was my favorite one. What did you think about that joke?
I mean, I don't know if they thought it was a little too mean or whatever, but I mean, it is a roast, so I don't know.
You should have seen the racial material that I got through. Anyway, a lot going on in September, of course, like I mentioned. Two main events I wanted to talk about briefly. The first one is just a couple of weeks from now. A couple of months ago, we tried signing up for a Fan on the Street submission for the Rap podcast, where I was just going to continue doing the street interviews that I usually do, but we could incorporate some of their show's content in there, and it would have been a good collaboration. So I submitted, and then they just never followed through with the contest. And I followed through. We tried to send emails. We did things on social media to no avail. So, Louis J. Gomez is going to be in Janesville, Wisconsin at the Comedy Cabin in a couple of weeks, and we're just going to be standing out there doing our street interviews and think we're going to try to confront him directly. So that's going to be exciting there. September 7th, I believe that is. That sounds like a good idea. What do you do there to get someone's attention once online hasn't worked? You got to go find them face to face. And of course, September 24th, which is very exciting, I'm actually going to be appearing at a coffee shop for a 2-hour broadcast. We're going to be doing some interviews with tourists and different people visiting the shop, and maybe the shop owners and things like that. But we're going to be at Cosmic Oasis in Galena, Illinois, a collaboration. They sponsored the show a few months ago, and now we're going to be collaborating on a new project, and that's going to be great. We're going to be in their space for 2 hours, 6 to 8 p.m., September 24th. And that should be really exciting. Look out for that on the Instagram, DC 30-minute half-hour show. What do you think about that? Have you ever done any live appearances like that?
I mean, I've had like a couple of times where I've spoken to people, mostly through, mostly through Zoom about just very political science topics. So I do a little bit of that. Haven't had too many in-person ones.
I see. Well, this is going to be a bit of a first. We did do a live show, of course, in February, which was a live produced show on a stage, less so of just mingling in with a crowd at a venue for a couple hours, but we're going to see how that goes there. If you were at a coffee shop, what do you think you would be asking people?
I'm not a coffee guy myself, but
you'd be saying, "Why are you even here?"
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they do have though. They have these balls that are carbonated or something, and they put them in a tea. It's a ball tea or something like that, and it's very good. People like it. It gives people energy. Have you appeared on any other shows? You said you've done maybe some correspondent work. Do you go on any podcasts or any shows or anything like that?
I've been on a few podcasts. Yeah, actually going to, hopefully be on one in the next couple of days. But I got jury duty this week, so we'll see how that works. Actually,
how big's the trial? Maybe that could be recorded, and you can put that in your credits too.
I don't know about that. I did serve on jury duty once, and I actually came to really enjoy it. Certainly not the actual trial. The trial was very serious, matter. But getting to actually be on the jury and participate in the process.
The responsibility, the enjoyable duty. You're serving your country in a way, of course. So that you could definitely understand that. We've appeared on many shows over the course of season 2 here, and Jerry went ahead and made a quick compilation of some of those appearances. We appeared on Johnny O's podcast, Hack Ride, multiple Hack Ride Studios shows, The Blind Mike Project, Who Are the Podcast. We've appeared on other shows too. And so Jerry made a quick, I think about a 90-second, the compilation here. So why don't we take a quick listen?
And David, you run a very professional operation. I know Jerry probably.
Well, that's
helps
very
you out
sweet.
with
Speaking of Hack Ride, what a professional operation he runs.
You see, you can't. It's.
I love trivial arguments, but I thought, Carl, Jerry told me that you would be fascinated by this clip, so we went ahead and pulled it. This is clip 19.
Well, first of all, you mentioned Jerry. I've been hearing about Jerry less and less. Is he all right?
Oh, he's trying to disconnect a little from the show, and we want to get him on board. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I think it's more of a personal dispute that we're dealing with.
What happened? Do you care to divulge?
I would not care to divulge.
All right.
I was just trying to get to the 100 as quick as I possible.
Jerry worked very hard on this.
Jerry didn't do shit.
So, take you behind the scenes for a moment, folks.
Yeah, I'm not even near Jerry. I'm here by myself too, so it's even
that's the thing. We got David on a Jerry-less day.
Unfortunately, that's all rumors. Levy is very sick, as far as I understand. So there's no truth to that at this point.
Oh, is Bob Levy dying? I didn't know this. He just doesn't respond. Can you hear me, David?
Yeah, no problem at all. Craig,
with Joe Fernandez, who's a great Chicago comedian. He has a special out called Demented, but he was a fine enough guest.
Okay. Fine enough. That sounds like you didn't really like him that much.
No, he's a very nice guy.
Okay, all right.
Craig wouldn't like him.
Got loud and clear.
171 time in 100 and an hour and 33 minutes. That's almost twice a minute.
Right.
Well, fun fact.
Well, thanks so much for putting that together, Jerry. It seemed to be a lot of mentions of you and not so much other shows other than WATP and Blind Mike Project, but that was a great compilation. What did you think about some of that? Some moments of me appearing on some other shows throughout the last about a year.
It's definitely interesting. A little bit out of context for me personally, but
right.
Yeah.
And we generally try to keep things as an audio format. I'm a little disappointed. I imagine that the video elements of that is gonna look good for those people, but we do try to keep. I think Jerry's a little more off theme these days, but we're gonna get things back pulled together there. What's your favorite show that you've appeared on, do you think?
I don't know. I don't try to think too much in that regard of what's.
Well, I'm hoping that it can be ours today, of course, because this is our sound. That means it's time for our first game. And we talked a little about this in the emails, of course. And Paul was so excited. He said, "Oh, I like this style of game. I like this style of game. Well, I hope you like this style of game." Today's first game, Game 1, Which Dead Guy is Dan Doing? This is a game where Dan McCullough has sent in some great impressions, and you're going to have to tell us which dead guy is Dan doing after listening to one of his impressions. Are you ready to play? Which dead guy is Dan doing?
Sounds good. Let's go.
Perfect. Why don't we jump into round 1 here?
Hey, lighten up, Toots. You're watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. Hey, lighten up, Toots. You're watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show.
Which dead guy is Dan doing?
I mean, I guess the easy answer would be Frank Sinatra, but maybe somebody in his vein like Dean Martin, if not Frank Sinatra.
Wow. Well, that's the Rat Pack, right? Would you like to lock in Frank Sinatra?
Let's go with Frank Sinatra, yes.
Wow. First round, first game, already correct. That was right. Frank Sinatra was an iconic American singer and actor, widely regarded as one of the most influential musical artists of the 20th century. Born in 1915, wow. He gained fame for his smooth voice and charismatic stage presence. Frank Sinatra. Do you like this game?
No, I love a good impression. I can't say that mine are necessarily good either, but I like doing impressions every so often.
Right. Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I love a good impression. Why don't we jump into round 2?
You are watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. You are watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show.
Right. Which dead guy is Dan doing?
Well, for a moment it sounded like Christopher Walken, but he's not dead, so...
Well, that's a great deductive reasoning.
Yeah.
We wanted to do an RFK impression, but certainly that doesn't work. Yeah, RFK Jr., certainly, because that's the one you do impression. Who even knows RFK's voice?
I've heard him speak a couple times.
We said the same thing about Bill Clinton, to be honest.
I don't know. I just completely forgot what the impression sounded like. I might have to pass on this one.
I'm sorry, you have ran out of time. That answer was John F. Kennedy.
Oh, of course it was.
Certainly.
I thought that was a little bit too obvious of an answer, so I kind of was trying to think of something else. But
right,
should have gone with the obvious answer.
Well, that's what a lot of people say. They come in here, they say, "Oh, is that a trick question?" No, we're very straightforward, and Dan does great impressions, so you really stand a good chance. John F. Kennedy, often referred to as JFK, was the 35th president of the United States, serving from 1961 until his assassination in 1963. Do you remember that?
No, I can't say. That was definitely before my time. Phil Donahue was iffy, but JFK was definitely before my time.
Well, I wonder what Phil Donahue had to say at the time of the assassination. He was probably around 88. I'm not the quickest at math. Why don't we look at round 3 here? I really am excited for this one. Round 3. Which dead guy is Dan doing?
Hello, I was poisoned by David Collins. You are watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. Hello, you are watching David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show.
Which dead guy is Dan doing? Now, this might be a little tricky for some, but it might be the easiest one of all for others.
Oof, yeah. Definitely sounds Russian. Or
is that right?
Trying to be a Russian accent. Oh boy, I'm gonna run out of time on this one. I'm just trying to think of like a.
You were exactly right, and you have ran out of time. That answer was Alexei Navalny. Alexei Navalny is a Russian opposition leader, lawyer, and anti-corruption activist known for his outspoken criticisms of President Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. He only died this year, I believe.
Yes, a few months ago, yeah.
And who knows anything about that? So you're a political commentator and writer. What got you started in that field? because I do some stand-up comedy more recently at the beginning of this year, but I've been broadcasting since I was 18 on the radio, of course, college radio, and then I transitioned to 101.5 K-Rock. Did you start when you were 18?
I guess you could say that.
Well, like a comedian says, I started at 5 years old around the dinner table.
Well, I don't know about like a specific time to say this is when I became a nonpartisan.
You don't think you
analyst.
were woken by something? A lot of people reference maybe the Iraq War or Obama or something like that, and they say this is my starting point into political awareness.
Well, so I knew back in high school I had an interest in politics, but it took a while for me to figure out what exactly that was. It was about my last year on campus at the University of South Florida, Go Bulls, that I met. I'd actually seen her on TV before. I'd already known who she was, but Dr. Susan McManus, who was is a political analyst, and she goes on local publications, national publications to talk various politics, especially Florida politics, which is where I am. But
a real local hero.
Yeah, but that when I had her class, that's really what clued me into being, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to do the analysis work. I want to teach people about it. I want to research it, that sort of thing.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's interesting. How old do you think you were? Also, I forgot, shout out KSDB. You were right. I like to shout out my college radio station also when it gets mentioned. You say, go Bulls, go Wildcats.
Oh, there you go. That was 2014, so I was 21.
I see.
93.
So let me ask you here: you're nonpartisan. You try to be as objective as possible. So you're the person to ask who's going to win this year.
I mean, I can't. I don't have the third eye. I can't say that.
Right.
I know exactly who's going to win. And I mean, prognostications are fine and all, but I think people get caught up a lot in them, and lots of things can change over the course of 2 months. Right now, obviously, Kamala Harris has a really big boost because she just became
certainly
the Democratic nominee to replace Joe Biden. But
I'd like to see Dean Phillips get a little more attention.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he's going to be getting too much attention there.
Well, what I'm wondering, a lot of people I'm hearing is Kamala even going to be the nominee? I hear people saying, this is just a strategy. They're going to swap him out again.
No, I mean, I don't see why.
Well, Jerry keeps saying that, I guess I should say.
Yeah, no, I don't see why. I mean, I guess maybe anything is possible, but
right.
But no, until something actually happens to suggest that that's going to happen, she's going to be the nominee. But
well, I should say, for the listeners out there, of course, we're talking about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Those are the two people running. Yeah,
the two main people. I mean, there'll always be third-party candidates running as well. I'm not sure who
Jill Stein
right now. Now, Jill Stein, well, she's run the past few times, so she'll be for the Green Party again.
I'll be participating in a Stein holding competition October 5th. And we're really looking forward to that. That's gonna be something. I think we get that on the Instagram too.
Oh, there you go.
Jill Stein should do something like that. She should say Jill Stein holding competition for the Green Party. They don't do a lot of things that get people's attention. Is all I'm really getting at there. They should do something with Oktoberfest. And it's right before the election. That might be good.
Yeah, well...
Have you ever participated in the Oktoberfest events?
I have not. I'm personally not a drinker. I don't have a moral opposition to it. I just don't like the taste of alcohol. It's not for me.
Right. Well, I heard Donald Trump say, speaking of Donald Trump, I heard him say just this week, he said, if you never have a taste of it, you never want it. That's what he said. But he also says that if he only have so many heartbeats, and that's why he doesn't want to work out. I think he's an interesting guy. So you've written a book. I've never written a book. What's it like writing a book? And tell me a little about that book.
Well, it's definitely an intensive process. You got to really be committed to it, and it was a little hard to do with all my other work that I'm working on, and
I'm sure.
But it was definitely a fulfilling process. I did the self-publishing route. I didn't do like a normal publisher or anything like that. But
right.
Like you said, for the books, Why Independents Rarely Win Elections and how they could become more competitive. It's not arguing that we should have more or that we shouldn't have more. It's just laying out the landscape of all the reasons why they have so much trouble and potential ways that these obstacles can be mitigated. And a lot of these ways people don't really realize, like how voter psychology, so many people, plurality, sometimes even a majority of people in polls that say, "Oh, I want an independent to win. I want a third major party." But
at the same time, people like to vote for a winner.
Exactly. So they sometimes vote for what they call as the quote unquote lesser evil, and then they never vote a certain way. And then there's like, well, why can't these people become more competitive? So it's just a lot of it's just a more in-depth look into that and why they don't win. Now I do feel strongly about the need for political competitiveness.
Right.
I'm not going to say that that you should vote for this person, but I do believe that we have a major issue with the competitiveness of elections, because there's a lot of elections at the local, state, and federal levels where no matter what happens, whenever one person of a particular party wins it, sometimes it'll be Republican, sometimes it'll be Democrat. Nobody else, it's just the numbers just don't work out for them. Sometimes there's just too many Democrats in the district, too many Republicans in the district, whatever the case may be.
Certainly. Well, you got to flood those in with some competition. It's like what they did in that Wild Wild West movie, where they brought all those homeless people over so they could get their cult into the officials. Anyway, Paul Rader. It's an interesting name. You know, we have a fun segment that we like to do sometime.
People with the same name.
People with the same name. Do you know somebody else with Paul Rader?
Well,
he's pretty famous, of course. Paul Rader, born 1899 and passing in 1988. Is this your grandfather?
No, that is not my grandfather. My grandfather actually just passed a couple months ago, actually. But,
I see. Well, this Paul Rader,
I don't know if that's the one, but I know there is an evangelist by the name of Paul Rader.
That's certainly right. He was a significant figure in early Christian broadcasting, influential in the Chicago area during the early 20th century. He was the first nationwide radio preacher in the United States. His early adoption of radio as a medium for religious outreach helped lay the groundwork for modern Christian broadcasting. That way it's the pressure of the phone call, so I apologize. People with the same name. Isn't that interesting? A little Paul Rader tie-in, a radio tie-in.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe it was meant to be.
Well, I hope that you have some red cards to hand out here, because I certainly have some red cards to hand out today. We like to hand out some red cards on the show, and I'm sure you'll get it here, and then you'll be able to give us a red card also. My first red card I wanted to hand out today was anybody putting political signage at all in their front yard. Do you put any political signage in their front yard?
Nope.
I've been participating a little more in this. I've been smoking a little more of the cannabis recently, and I spend a lot of time in Iowa, so I have to go on a walk or whatnot. And I walk past these Kamala Harris signs, and I get very nervous. What do you think about that? And that's why anybody putting signage on their front yard there gets a red card this week. My second red card here just goes out to reckless drivers. You know, if you're driving down the road and somebody has their hazards on the side, you have to either slow down or pull over. It's the law. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And that's why reckless drivers get a red card this week. Do you have any red cards that you want to hand out this week?
Oh, you know, I'm sure there are. There usually is. There's always something that's sometimes it's trivial, sometimes excuse me, sometimes it's not so trivial. I think people in general that think they have everything political figured out and that their worldview can solve everything that's going on in the world, and that everybody else just needs to figure out that they're right. I'll give those people a red card. How about that?
Well, that's thoughtful. They get a red card this week too. Would you say those people kind of piss you off?
It just kind of adds to the toxicity of politics, where you have a lot of, call it know-it-allism. That's just whatever. They find things that comport with what they already believe, and they just filter everything through that lens. It's
definitely. When we have a correspondent on the show that you're kind of reminding me of there, he often sends in, we have a segment here of, why don't we take a little listen to here, what's pissing off Brody Toopy this week?
That pisses me off.
You pissed me off.
I'm really pissed off. Things that piss me off this week.
So sometimes he'll send in a little thing and let us know and catch us up what's going on with him. Why don't we take a little listen to Brody Toopy here?
Hey, David, I gotta tell you some things that really piss me off. when my brother doesn't pour out the expired milk and I ruin a bowl of cereal because chunky milk falls all over it, that pisses me off. Another thing that pisses me off is when I want to sunbathe in my backyard, but my nosy neighbors are trying to be sneaky and catch some peeks. That pisses me off. Another thing that pisses me off the most is when people drive the wrong direction in the Sam's Club gas station. That is the worst because it's the only place where they paint arrows, so only one direction is for the pumps. And people have almost hit my car several times because they're going the wrong direction. That pisses me off.
Great, well that certainly wasn't Brody Toopy. I'm not sure who that was. I do love a good prank. That's a good one, Jerry. But, alright, thanks so much for that voicemail then. What did you think about that? Some of those things would piss me off too, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. The gas station one doesn't bother me too much as long as you're giving people enough room. I will tell you though, it just made me think of one that's one of my biggest pet peeves in driving is people who can't park in between the lines. Or actually, it's not even about that they can't park in between the lines, is that they just don't bother to do a good job, and they will park on the line and in effect take two spaces, and they don't actually even attempt to try to fix their parking job. Yeah, those people really get my goat, so to speak.
Wow.
What are you doing?
I'm emailing David Collins.
And of course, that sound means we've reached the time of our show where we listen to some great voicemails that we've had sent on the show and maybe read an email or two. But this week, we asked for Season 2 guests to send in some voicemails for the show. We only got a few of them, so I thought we'd just play them back to back here. Why don't we take a quick listen? It was Blind Mike, Troy Rigdon, and Austin Ingalls.
Hey there, David Collins 30-minute half-hour show fans. It's your old pal, Blind Mike Geary. You know, David Collins has become one of my favorite podcasters, particularly favorite young podcasters out there. This kid's a rising star, and it's been an honor for me to have David on my show and be associated with his program in the forms that I have. So I just wanted to send a message to the David Collins 30-minute half-hour fans out there and say happy season finale. And what a ride it's been, quite frankly. Ups and downs, twists and turns here on David Collins 30-minute half-hour show. And I appreciate being a small part of it. So I wanted to say to David and all of you fans out there, that's perfect.
Hey, David, it's your buddy Troy. Just wanted to call and ask you, is your refrigerator running? You better go catch it. Nah, but for real, I just wanted to call and say congratulations on another swell season of the David Collins 30-minute half-hour show. It was a great time watching you go all the way through. Glad to be a guest. Get at me in season 3, bud. Have a good day.
David, sorry for the late message. I just want to congratulate you on a great second season. Wow. Full of growth, full of surprises, full of everything you could ask for in a season 2. Can't wait to see what season 3 brings. When will this show end, How long will it go? Will it be like Lost, where people want it to end? Or will it be like Breaking Bad, where you don't want it to end? I don't know. We're having fun, David. Miss you, buddy. Congrats.
Boy, thanks so much for those voicemails, everybody. Really great to hear from. And if anybody else ever wants to send in a voicemail or an email, make sure you email me, dc30minutehalfhour@gmail.com. I also just wanted to touch base on this. Do you ever take emails or anything on your show? Of course, I read your email address at the beginning. Maybe that was just for some more personal business or anything like that. But do you ever read questions on your show?
Well, I only just started, but I do want to incorporate that more as the show expands its listener base, and viewer base. But I mean, you there's nothing. I have nothing against emailing me at paulraderwrites@gmail.com if you have something for the podcast. So if you tune in, you want to send something in, I'll try to incorporate it.
Certainly. And people like to send in jokes to our show sometimes. And these people, this is, for example, this is Mikkel from Copenhagen. He writes, "Hi, David. I was wondering what your favorite part of the Olympics was this year. My favorite part was Denmark winning gold in badminton. Love your show. Keep up the great work. Signed, Mikkel." Thanks so much for that email, Mikkel. I enjoyed the 10,000 meter run. I think there's a lot, it's constantly changing throughout the race, and you think you know what's going to happen, and then it always changes, and it's a long race. So many of these events, it's done by the snap of your fingers, and I can't really get into that. Badminton, though, how exciting. Do you like the Olympics?
Oh, I was all in on the Olympics. Sadly, I did not get a chance to watch handball. Handball is always fascinating to watch.
Right, that must be very interesting. Is that your favorite event?
Overall, probably is the most fun to watch.
I think I agree there too, and I feel like I could talk about the Olympics all day. Unfortunately, though, that does mean it's time for our second and last game today. And our last game today is an old favorite. It's one of my favorites here, American Radio Trivia. So we're going to be going through a quick trivia question, and you have a multiple choice, and you have to determine which of those is the correct answer. Paul Rader, are you ready to play American Radio Trivia?
Let's do it.
Perfect. All right, and why don't we jump into round one here? Doing this for an hour burns 11 calories. Doing this for an hour burns 11 calories. And if you want to participate in the game, make sure you email me, dc30minutehalfhour@gmail.com. Is it A, typing at a computer? Is it B, smoking cigarettes? C, chewing gum? Or D, playing a slot machine? Doing this for an hour burns 11 categories.
I feel like I've heard this before. I'm going to say gum, but I could... There we go.
You're exactly right. Chewing gum. And these are... there's no explanation on a lot of these trivia questions. Who knows even where this... There's not sourced or anything like that. I'm not sure. Jerry does a lot of the research for me on this, so we just kind of trust him. But the answer was, and if you've heard it before, it must be correct. Chewing gum burns 11 calories after an hour. Not as effective as I might thought. I wonder what those other calories burn, or those other activities burn for calories. Why don't we jump into round two here? 49% of college students will do this at least once this semester. What is it? 49% of college students will do this at least once this semester. Is it A, sleep on a lawn? B, steal from the homeless? C, not eat for an entire day? Or D, stay up all night studying? 49% of college students.
Yeah. This just for any potential college students that are listening to this, because I was there. I think there was one time I went and studied all night. It is not helpful. You're just gonna be too tired and you're not gonna be able to think. But that's what I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna say 49% are gonna stay up all night to study.
Well, you might say 49% are gonna make that same mistake that you did.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Only did it once, and never again.
Oh, well, that's a great tip there for any college students out there. 49% of college students will pull a study all-nighter at least once this semester. And maybe it's just this. Maybe this upcoming semester is especially difficult, and that's why they pulled that question. I'm not really sure. Why don't we look at round three here? What do you think about this game compared to Dan's impressions in this game? Which ones do you think is your favorite?
I don't know. I like them both. You just gotta. Whenever the impressions are there, if I think it's a straightforward answer, just give a straightforward answer. But I like both of them.
Perfect. Why don't we look at round three? You know what I'm just noticing? We even did David Collins' captivating developments today. Didn't even mention my haircut. We're just kind of breezing through that, but why don't we just go into round three here? 56% of dog owners allow their dogs to do this. Uh-oh. What is it? Is it A, lick their face, B, eat their leftovers, C, dig up their yard, or D, go outside by themselves? 56% of dog owners allow their dogs to do this. Lick their face, eat their leftovers, dig up their yard, or go outside by themselves.
I'm going to go with lick their face.
And that's exactly right. I might have actually gone with eat your leftovers there. I think that was a good answer, but you're exactly right. Lick their face. Do you have any pets?
Yes, I have a dog, and she's I love her dearly.
What is the rule on licking the face? Are you a 44%er or a 56%er?
Oh, I don't mind when she does it. No, I love her dearly.
You allow it. Well, I guess that makes you that 56% there.
Not too much, though. Not too much.
Boy, what a great show there. Paul, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Do you have anything you want to plug? Lastly, here, of course, you have your podcast, Politics with Paul Podcast, and you have your book that you're promoting there, and you can find it on Amazon, and the links are everywhere that you find your stuff, I imagine. You have a website, .org, which is interestingly enough. Anything you want to say here? Any questions for me?
Politics with Paul on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. You can follow my Facebook at Paul Rader, author and speaker. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn. And other than that, I think you hit on all the other points, though.
Oh, that's perfect. This has been a bit of a longer show, but we had to do a short one last week. It was that solo episode that I had mentioned, so I'm glad that we could make up for it. Thanks one more time again for coming on the show today, Paul Rader. Boy, what a great show. That's perfect. Everybody listening, I've been David Collins, and you've been the best.
David Collins. 30 minutes. Show with David Collins.